you were not a captain yet when you became lost at sea. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Basically, what happened is you guys fell from
The crest, yeah.
from the crest of a wave straight down.
Yes.
And you said it was a 50-foot wave?
I know that as I was falling forward, everything within my peripheral was in the wave. I'll never forget when I hit, and I started to duck down, and I just heard this awful this breaking noise, and looked up to see this crack going across our bow deck, starting from the right side going over to the port side. There's 3 words. It's the same word: Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We were in about 6,000 feet of water, 90 miles out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Even though everything in front of me said you're going to die, everything in my eyes, you're going to die, I knew that we were going to live.
All right, welcome to Can You Survive This podcast. My guest today is Captain Johnny Savage. Welcome to Can You Survive This podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. Looking forward to it. I love y'all's I guess your format, and you're just the intensity of when y'all hit with the rapid fire questions, and really makes you think.
Yeah.
Because when you get in that survival situation, it's your mind is most of it, I feel like.
Yeah. So you have a very interesting background there. Can you tell me about where are you calling in from?
So I'm calling in from a place called Valhalla's Mission Force. It's kind of like in the same facility where a place called Valhalla's Forge is, that they do commission work, whether it's plaques or it could be like, for example, right behind me is this really cool looking, like, half a drum with an explosive plate in it, used like UDT kind of, or SEAL teams kind of like use it for practice, where it blows out. And they just make a lot of neat stuff well, it can be for any sector. I mean, the city of Virginia Beach was just calling and wanting to know about a plaque, and it's amazing. But what they have here is something that's bigger than life, related to the brotherhood that's created through what's called Valhalla's Mission Force. And that's the 501c, and so it's a place where men can come, and women too, and do builds like shields. They can build knives, tomahawks, and they have a array of artifacts that are here and that can go into the builds. Like a lot of military folks, for example, they can come in and they can choose from, steel from the World Trade Center. They have sand from some pretty big raids, and that SEAL teams have done. They've got they got a stone from the battlefield of David and Goliath. Parts of different, like, so you put a piece of submarine in there, you put a piece of U-2 spy plane, but that's just what's inside the knife. And then on the knife is actually you put your ethos on the knife, things that are important to you. A lot of times, when we have police or military, they'll put their unit on the blade, and they'll, like, for example, we just did Norfolk SWAT team, and most of them had it epoxied through the wooden handle a thin blue line, and then they put their emblem, inlaid in the wood. And a lot of people do like scripture on the spine of the knife. It's their story. And so the way the knife builds go is, we come in, Jimmy, who's the one that founded this organization, he talks about leadership and resilience, and then shares a little bit about his history. Then from there we go into starting the build. At lunchtime, lunch is brought in, and then typically he'll have me share my story about resilience and never giving up. And then at the very end of the day, once the knives are completed, they do like a round robin where each builder will discuss their knife and what's in it. And it's been amazing to see what happens in that moment. So there was a gentleman that is a state trooper in Virginia, and he told me, with this last build a few days ago, he's like, John, I've been a lot of places, seeing a lot of stuff, and I had never seen anything like this, where somebody can go sit in a classroom for hours, or sit with a group for hours and hours and hours, days and days and days, months and months and months, and not get what they'll get here in an 8-hour day building a knife. that's pretty powerful.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. So you guys are a 501(c) and you're having like groups of veterans and police officers in to build custom knives, and I guess they're getting a lot more than just a knife out of it though. It's kind of like brotherhood and sharing their stories and that kind of thing.
Most definitely. And then I've seen where some of the toughest dudes you'd ever see, within 15 minutes of being in this facility, there's tears in their eyes and they're crying, and they're getting loved on, and we're being brothers, and it forms a unique bond, and not only are you building an heirloom, but you're building uh, something that cannot be separated. And a big part of it is opening up, where you realize it's okay to talk. It's okay for us to talk to each other, and especially like, for example, in, say, a police officer situation. You know, sometimes they're viewed as weak if they talk about their feelings. Uh, it could it affect their position? Yeah, I mean, that's some of the fears that they go through related to talking. And this is a place where it's open and okay to talk. And what you say here stays here, and we're going to love on you. And if you need help beyond this place, well, we're gonna encourage that. For example, when I'm speaking, a lot of times, I'll say, look, for me, I believe in, that when we have issues, sometimes we need to make sure we're taking it vertical and we're going horizontal with it too, um, because that's
What,
where a lot of peace can come from.
what do you mean by that, going vertical and horizontal?
For me, taking it to the Lord, and when we talk about my story, then that's kind of like, you can't tell me that God's not real. Just by what I experienced in that ocean, fighting for my life. He
Yeah.
was with me the whole time, and it's good for these guys to know that, look, they're never alone, because I think that's the enemy wants us to think that we are alone, and there's no hope for us, and we're a failure, and we aren't. We all fail at times, and we learn from our failures, but we're never a failure.
So by going vertical, you mean connecting with your higher power or God,
Yes,
and then horizontal, I guess, is connecting with the
professionals.
yeah, the brothers and sisters who are there with you.
Yes, but I mean, we definitely aren't professionals. We're just brothers and sisters that just care about each other. But the professional, the on the mental side, they're the ones that study that stuff. We just know people and know that we all need to feel loved.
Absolutely. And how long have you been working with Valhalla's mission force?
So it's about a year ago is when I was first stepped into the door, and I tell you what, man, the first time I stepped into this place, I don't think that there's a museum anywhere that holds what this place holds, related to some of with the artifacts, just with there's like, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, there is just something about this place that's not, it's greater than just like a aura. It's just, I don't know, I can't put it into words how special it is. And I think that's why, like I said, there's been guys that have been in these doors for 15 minutes that started crying, because there's a peace here. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah. So there's a friend of mine, and actually his story is in the book. And what happened with him is, he was a city of Virginia Beach detective for like 15 years from Detective Bureau, studied some pretty bad, or investigated some pretty bad crimes, wicked things that people have done to each other. When you talk to a lot of these guys, as far as that are police and first responders, and well, even the military as well, it's just, when you talk about people doing evil things to kids, that just takes it to another level. And sometimes those demons that go in those closets are hard to hold down. And so anyway, so he had been in that particular bureau for a while. And then he was in the motor carrier unit. That's when we became friends. I'm also a safety engineer with Virginia Paving, which we have a lot of dump trucks. So we would work together through that, and he helped to try to educate me as far as dump trucks and um, motor vehicle safety. And from there, I mean, we just developed friendship. We would go hunting together, and then we had the building 2 shooting here at our municipal center, which obviously the city of Virginia Beach police officers are municipal employees. So here it is. There's a mass shooting going on in a building with their coworkers. Um, so they have to go in there and do their job. And for a lot of them, it caused a lot of pain. Obviously because not only kids but people when you have to respond to those types of situations is what they tell me, and I can see it. And so I was driving home from work one day, and he called me. He was in tears, and he was like, "We need help." I'm like, "How can I help you, brother?" He goes, we need an outlet for these guys. We need to start something that's like a Wounded Warriors for police officers." I'm like, "That's awesome. That sounds like a great idea. What do you need?" So my particular family, we're fortunate. We have a farm up near Richmond, Virginia, and he's been there before. So he's like, "Can we maybe just go to the farm and get away for a weekend?" I'm like, "No problem at all. We'll do it." And then what else? He goes, "Well, I'm hoping to see this develop into something bigger. And but if people are going to be involved in it, I want them to hear your story." And so in that case, it was okay. If they're going to hear my story, they're going to hear a little bit about the Lord, because I mean that's the only reason I'm here. And he's like, "Yeah, that's great. That's what I want them to hear that story." And we wanted it to be like a situation where not that something anything's wrong related to drinking, but when you're depressed, that means drinking doesn't help. That's not where you want to turn, because it's a depressant.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll start making some phone calls." So I started calling farmers in this area about getting permission. Farmers that had never let anybody hunt their land, as far as I know, or use their property. And they're like, "John, no problem. I got a pond over here they can go fishing in. This would be a great place if they want to go camping." So there was just like this outpouring of love and support for this program. And we had a couple meetings to get it going together, and then COVID hit and kind of squashed it. And then from there, that's when Scott was introduced to Jimmy, and he started volunteering here at the mission force, and then going to work for the mission force when he retired from the city, and brought me in to check it out. And I'm like, "This is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my entire life." And
Wow.
that's cool. It's cool to be for the brotherhood. And man, I tell you what, just how it's helping people. And man, it's the looks on their faces when they're building these knives, and right before when they're finished and they walk out the door. And if I can, I try to put a book in their hand. Been fortunate enough to do some speaking events and like to do more of those. But put a book in their hand, and for them to pass on and just share the story of love. And
Beautiful.
it's huge.
Amazing. Thank you for doing that for the community.
Yeah, and you can Instagram. If you put the link on the bottom, maybe I can connect you with the Valhalla's Message Force, and then Seal Artisan and Scott Schumel, and I can get that to you afterwards. But yeah,
Yeah.
if they want to find out more, if they want to donate, the Mission Force has a website
Mhm.
that you can link right to. Then and on it there's the copy of the 501(c) letter, just to
Amazing.
put it
Amazing.
out there. They look, it truly is a actual.
Do you know how often are they having groups of guys in there to do knife builds, or can people just come in any time and hang out and check out the artifacts, or what's the kind of protocol?
The best thing to do is, well, and that's the thing. So these doors are all, if somebody is struggling, these doors are always open.
Hmm.
And Jimmy is very clear about that. Like if somebody comes in and they're on the ledge, you know, we shut down and we love on them, and we help, and we're brothers, and we bring them in.
Yep.
And as far as the schedule for the knife builds, Scott does a good job of regularly putting that out on Instagram.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, just in contacting to find out when the next one is.
Yeah. Cool. And that's open to like any police officers, or is it like strictly Virginia Beach area,
No,
or?
no, no. Actually, this is really cool. So they're trying to kind of, and it's a little bit more challenging. So it takes more planning up front related to like a mobile build situation, where like they having like a trailer set up, but all the engraving will already have to be done on the knife for the person. So they need to make sure they get that to the mission force, and then basically they'll bring the kydex, which is what the sheath is made out of. Bring the blade, wood, and then it's just well, that they're together now, but then they're sanding it, they're finishing it, they're varnishing it, and they're or staining it, and getting it nice and polished up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Here, I'll show you. Yeah, it's kind of, that's what one looks like where it's finished up, polished up. So yeah, they're just it's just rough wood, and then the builder cleans it all up and it's even the metal all shined. Pretty
Nice.
cool.
Yeah, and
And
so
then
for anyone out there who's just listening, he's check out the YouTube because he's showing some of the knife. He's showing one of the knives or an example of what they build there at Valhalla's mission force.
the shields are really cool. Here's one of the shields.
Oh wow,
Pretty
very
cool,
cool.
isn't
Yeah,
it? And then like a lot of times in the leather, like if like when a family comes in, they'll put their ethos on there and what's it and the family name on the shield as well.
very cool.
Yeah, it is. So see, that's what I mean. That's like, wow. I mean, how do I get to be so fortunate to be included in this stuff? I don't see any of the tomahawks, but yeah, tomahawks are pretty much very similar to the knife build.
Oh, you're doing tomahawks too.
They do tomahawks too. Yes.
Amazing. So, and so for those people listening who don't know what your story is, we're going to get into that in a few minutes, but
Okay.
you were actually lost at sea, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're sharing that story with a lot of the people who come in. Are you kind of like sharing your story and it's a story of hope and resilience and faith?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the neat part of it. So my story's there. I share it. You know, it's in the book. The best part for me is their stories, and it's like it opens the door for them to share their stories. Like, all right, this person's done it, so now let me tell them a little bit about me. And it's man, I tell you what, it's so humbling. And I don't share many of the details of their stories, but I mean, I've heard stuff from you could situations where it's like we know we aren't alone. You know, from a police officer who has been in the crosshairs of a fugitive, and the fugitive heard "Don't shoot him," to um, to an operator who was in a serious firefight that everything just kind of stood still for a second. He heard, "I'm going to get you out of this."
Wow.
Yeah, pretty
Amazing.
deep stuff.
So you've heard a lot of miracle stories.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the blessing of it. I mean, it's bigger than me.
Amazing. And so did you grow up around Virginia Beach?
Yes, yep, I sure did. I grew up down in the southern end of Virginia Beach, a little area called Blackwater. It's rural. I was in 4-H. My kids are in 4-H raising livestock, and it's an area with like a lot of swamps and marsh, and it's our area is unique that I didn't have one parent growing up. I had a bunch of parents
Yeah,
because of the
community.
yeah, and a lot of the community was through the local church, and which I went to church every Sunday, but I didn't exactly pay it. I was knew more about the ceiling tiles than I did what the preacher was talking about. But yeah, it was even to the point where my dad was with the city of Virginia Beach for many years, and I couldn't get away with anything. If I was like speeding on the way home and a cop flashed their lights at me, I'd have been better off if I would have got a speeding ticket because he knew about it before I got home.
Yeah, wow.
Um,
And
yes.
what is 4-H?
So 4-H is it's a youth organization. It's got multiple facets. There's like an urban section. There's even like a dive club, horse club. There's all these different clubs. It's about teaching children leadership and community. And I was in the 4-H livestock club. In the livestock club, what you do is you raise either when I was in it was a hog, steer, or lamb to market weight, and then then it's auctioned off. And now it's hogs, steers, lambs, goats, and right now we just picked up our lamb last weekend, and my daughter's going to raise that. But it's a really cool program because it teaches a child how to run a business. So when I went to college, to Old Dominion University. My degree's in safety, and then after the accident, I went back to school and found myself I was working at. We built the F-150 here in Norfolk, assembly plant for Ford, and I was working as a contractor there initially, and I was running managing a safety program on a $500 million project. So with that, there were other contractors because Ford would require any contractor to come in to have safety coverage. So basically, I had a safety business there where if you came in to do work, let's say you had 5 guys working, I would bill you maybe a couple hours a day for a safety person, even though you had coverage for the full day. So when you're in 4-H, you have to keep documents on your animals, and what, all your feed records, all your shot records, all your call, just like a business. And that's so when I was that's where I fell back to, was those records. And just like with my kids, they know that if they don't take care of their animal gets sick. Well, you got to call the large animal vet. It's not like going to the vet's office. I mean, they got to drive to you, so you're paying for the drive time and you're paying for all that. So it really cuts into their profit, and they learn to overcome a lot with that, is really making with health. Are they, they're checking gums, they're checking ears, checking noses, checking hooves. And the other part of it too is, so like, for example, my middle daughter, she was like terrified of the dark, and she didn't like waking up in the morning. So where I built the pens, where our property is, it's more back towards the woods. So I mean, they got to overcome fear to go back there, because it's dark. And not only are they, but it doesn't matter, rain, sleet, shine. You got to feed that. Its life is depending on you.
Mhm.
And just such an awesome experience for kids to learn that kind of responsibility. And ever since that first project, when it's time for her to get up, she's up.
Amazing.
It's something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. And so how long have you been going out on fishing boats? Is that something that you got into when you were really little, or how long you been doing that?
So my love for fishing started when I was young. My father, he would take me fishing all the time. And then my next door neighbor was actually, growing up, he was a lieutenant commander of SEAL Team 2, and so his son and I were best friends. So we would, if my dad wasn't taking us fishing, he was taking us fishing. So that's where the love for it really was rooted in a young age of a, you know 6-year-old boy going on. And then when I first started making money fishing, I was probably 12 years old, commercial gillnet fishing. Um, and then when I was 16 is when I started working on what's called a party boat. A party boat is it's roughly 65 feet, 75 feet, and it's like a party on there. There's a whole bunch of people that get on there. They're also called a head boat. Now they have a number of them out of California, and basically, you go out there and it's a bunch of people dropping their lines and getting tangled up. And you want to talk about learning patience and learning how to work with people. Like when I first started working on the head boat, I was in a shell. I mean, very, 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 closed off. Didn't really talk to me. I was forced to. I had to talk to people. If I didn't talk to people and help to educate them, my life was miserable. And the gentleman I was working for was good friends with my grandfather, who was in the Coast Guard. And he was tough on me. He would give me a harder time than he would some of the other workers. And finally, one day I went to him like, "Man, why are you so hard on me?" He goes, "Because you have potential, and I want you to be the best you can possibly be." And that stuck with me through my career, that I wanted to be the best, and I pushed harder and than the people around me to try to achieve that. Not saying I ever was the best, but I was pretty glad to be able to reach levels, get jobs where there's only a handful of people that would get the jobs.
Mhm.
And it was very rewarding. I learned a lot doing it. Learned learned that we have to push our limits every single day.
Mhm.
And once we've achieved that level, we need to go to the next. Because with fishing, you can't know it all. It's impossible. If anybody tells you that they know it all, just get away from them, because they're way too cocky.
Yeah.
'Cause it's too big of an ocean. It's an animal that has its own thoughts. The waters. There's so many different factors related to it. You can't get it all.
Yeah.
But you can learn every day. And I'm a firm believer, even as a captain, where I feel like even if I've mate steps on that boat and it's his first day fishing, there's something I can learn from him.
Mm.
I mean, he
Absolutely.
he sees a different way to do things that I've never seen it that way. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah. So how long ago was it that you became lost at sea?
So it was April 13th, 1998. So something kind of unique, kind of segueing into that, is April, well, in 1997 was the strongest El Nino in recorded history. Uh, I don't know if you remember, what it was. I mean, it was. Of course, it was happening out there in the Pacific, but it was affecting weather all the way across the United States.
Yeah.
And so I had finished my undergrad in '96, and I wanted to. And actually, I was doing an internship with the Department of Defense, and they had offered me a position as a industrial hygienist. And I told the government, no, I think I'm going fishing. And so then I started traveling. I would fish here, North Carolina, Oregon Inlet, Florida, Bahamas, Mexico, and then come back and do it all over again. And in a way, kind of like you're like a free agent in a way, and it's unique because once I switched over to sport fishing, which is catching like tuna, dolphin, marlin, like the big game fisheries. It's more of a your pride and your ego really drives you, because it's pretty competitive, and
Mhm.
you're doing amazing stuff, and you're not only but you're an employee of very wealthy people. You're an employee of their passion. So that's where it's a little bit different than, say, the people in their businesses. Like when you go into these people's offices, you look and they have their boat on the wall and they have their crew and like all their trophies and all this. Yeah, these guys won that for me. So you're almost treated like a professional athlete. It's not like where you may see some shows on TV related to the rich in the boating community where the crew goes down and hides and eats. It's not. I mean, where like the owners are like, you're coming to dinner with us at the restaurant where we're going because it's like you're a big family.
So
Uh,
so at that level, you have clients who are paying you to come out on their boat and help them to find the fish and pull them in and do all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's with charter fishing. So there's two types. There's charter fishing, which is exactly what you're talking about, which is what I mainly did. And then part of the year I would take off, kind of like it would be my break, which would be the spring, and then I would work on a private boat. Now I strictly run a private boat actually it's pretty cool because the private boat I run now I was his father's mate years ago.
Oh, wow.
It's a '62 Viking called the Desperado, and it's a neat story and wonderful family.
Okay. And so with that, people are hiring you to go out on your boat and you're taking them out.
So that with the private, they're hiring me to operate to run their boat for them.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
and it's because and there's a lot to it. With just our electronics these days are incredible. Like I've got something that drops down out of the bottom of the boat, and I can look out. Let's say you're in your boat and you're next to me. You're 2,000 feet away from me, and you're pulling your lines. I can say, you got a white marlin coming up there on your left side on that long line you got out there. Your long rigger. That's how detailed it is.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's great. It's crazy.
Yeah, I
Well,
bet. And how far out into the ocean from the shore are you?
okay, so that's a great question. It depends on where you are. Here we run about 60 miles, 65 miles. Sometimes to get to the continental shelf is the area where we generally fish. If you're in Palm Beach, Florida, that's the closest that the Gulf Stream comes to the continental U.S. Not that we're always fishing in the Gulf Stream, but that's the closest it comes, and the edge is real close right there. So there, it's you're just going a few miles and you're fishing. Keys are really close. Out of Hatteras, North Carolina, it can be fairly close, and Oregon Inlet as well. But yeah, and sometimes it just depends on where the fish are.
Yeah, okay. And are the fish though, are they sticking toward close to the Gulf Stream?
They so it depends on the time of year. During the winter, that's typically more where you're going to concentrate, or the eddies of water that come off the Gulf Stream. Like so, the Gulf Stream is flowing, and like you'll have like a little piece that'll spin off. Sometimes fish don't like the current a whole lot. Really, they use the Gulf Stream as a highway, but sometimes they eat better when they aren't in that strong current.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
Classic examples when you're fishing out of Hatteras, North Carolina. If the Gulf Stream goes slow one day, sometimes you have better fishing than if it's really like bucking.
Got you. Got you. What is the craziest thing you've ever seen out there? Like, have you seen whales, sharks, gigantic jellyfish? What is just
Wow.
something that just
So
blew your mind?
considering where we are, so we're in Virginia Beach, which is the Hampton Roads, which so we see a lot of crazy military stuff out there for one. But other than that, so years ago we went to Bermuda. So Bermuda is 620 miles out of here. We actually set a record going across because we had a full moon. We could see well, slick calm, so it was safe for us to run and not go like super like 10 knots at nighttime idle. So when we were coming back, we were probably maybe 90 miles off the island of Bermuda, something like that. And both the captain and I are sitting up on the bridge, and I look over, and it's like, what in the world? I'm like, Steve, what's that? And he's looking, and we see these things going across the top of the water. He's like, man, this things look like sea serpents. Sea serpent. and they were giant squid up on top during the daytime. Yeah,
Whoa.
they were about as like maybe bigger, a little bit bigger around than a 5-gallon bucket. It was nuts.
Wow. What do those look like? Like, what color is that?
It was it was kind of reddish, their body, but the thing that stood out the most was just the ink trail,
Yeah.
like
And what are they
looked like a
doing?
snake.
Is it, did you just see a couple of them? Like, are they fighting or they're playing or who
Nah,
the
they
hell
was like
knows?
they would just lay it. They were just like almost like sunning themselves. I mean, they don't I, like but they don't have footage of those things that I know of. Like during the day, they have plenty of nighttime footage, but and you know, like when the subs go down and those different drones or whatever go down, seeing them. But yeah, this was during the daytime. That was pretty crazy. Um, there was
Wow. Yeah.
whale sharks. I got a pretty good scare by a whale shark up here. We'd have to go up to a bow with a it's called a spinning rod and cast to tunas because they get kind of spooky, and we plug it. And I was up there on the bow doing that, and I happened to look over. And so when I say it's a bow deck, so the bow deck's pretty big. It's like like a 20-foot deck, area up there. And I look over and there's a whale shark right underneath me. At first, I didn't know it was a whale shark. I'm like, that's just a big shark, and then jump back and then realize what it was. But yeah, we see some cool stuff. Just every day is different. One of the I love the sunrise every morning.
Yeah.
So one of my old captains, David Wright, he followed suit with one of the old timers out of Oregon Inlet with saying a prayer for the fleet in the morning. And if David's not fishing that day and I'm fishing, then I'll say the prayer as the sun comes up. And um,
Beautiful.
because when you're out there, there's help is far away as far as from another human a lot of times,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or even rescue. I mean, 60 miles is out there.
Yeah. Is it common to see whales as well?
Yes, all the time. So that's something unique is when you get offshore, that water really kind of clears up and gets pretty, depending on what the conditions are related to those eddies coming off the Gulf Stream. Yeah, we see whales, finbacks, and a lot. We see a lot of different types of porpoises. Mainly pilot whales of the whale species is the most common, and we'll try to fish around them sometime. I've seen one of the biggest blue marlin I've ever seen was around a pod of pilot whales.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's really like another world out there.
it truly is. And then especially when you are to see like some sargassous seaweed in a bundle, the whole ecosystem that develops off one thing floating. There's a time that I can remember we were fishing out there one day, and there was a stick that was maybe a foot long, and from that one stick a foot long, there was like a ton of different. Like there was the bait, then there was like mahi mahi, or we call them dolphin here. Um, the dolphin fish, and then there were tunas there, and then I troll by it and catch a white marlin. Another boat trolls by it, and then he catches a blue marlin off of one stick. It's
Oh,
pretty amazing.
one stick. What do you mean a stick?
So basically, what will happen is when something's floating, the fish will kind of congregate there, kind of like hiding underneath of it.
Okay. And are they want to check it out and see what it is?
Yeah, so you'll have your minnows get underneath of it, and they'll kind of stick close to it and hide underneath of it because they feel like that's a safe place for them, which make kind of sense. I mean, you're out there in the wide open in the ocean, and you know something can just look up and see you. So if you can hide by this stick or this piece of plywood or this polyball or this, I've even seen refrigerators floating out there before. Um, but if they can hide up underneath that, they feel safe. But
Yeah.
then you have a little bit bigger fish that's going to eat that fish, and then another fish is going to eat that fish, and just build the ecosystem builds from. It's a fish eat fish world out there.
Wow. That's so cool. So I don't want to get too weird, but have you ever seen any really bizarre like UFOs or weird military technology?
So So one of my old captains, good friend of mine is his name's Kenny Sexy. He runs a boat out of Oregon Inlet now, and he comes up here with it too. So every now and then we do these overnight trips where we go out there. Back then, it was sword fishing or tuna fishing at night. And if you have a cloudy sky out there at night, it's weird because it's like you stick your arm off the side of the boat, it's like gone. Like you can't even see it. It gets so dark out there. And then when you have the stars, just like you hear about the pilots that will actually like crash into the ocean or whatever just by the optical illusion of things. And so yeah, it's definitely weird looking out there. So he was one that was absolutely terrified out there at nighttime because he was afraid that we were gonna get abducted by UFOs. I'm like, dude, we're not gonna get abducted by UFOs. We're cool. But then, so years later, there was one time I did get really freaked out. So years later, I was working on a boat on that High Hopes boat. So that was what's called an inspected boat. So most of your charter boats can take only 6 people. If you take more than 6 people, the Coast Guard has to do its regular inspections on the vessel. This is one of the boats that was inspected. So we would do different types of trips, not only fishing trips, but we would do like funerals and stuff like that. So most of our funerals were like you just go like a mile off the beach, throw a reef out, and people would dump their ashes. This was a little bit different. This was cargo, and it was a trip that nobody else would take. And it was actually a guy that wanted to be buried at sea. So by maritime law, if you're going to bury somebody at sea, you got to bury them off the continental shelf.
Mhm.
So my boss, my captain called me, and told me about that. And I'm like, look, man, I am not getting on that boat with a dead man. It ain't happening. He goes, come on, it's not that bad. I'm like, I'm serious, man. I'm not getting on the boat with a dead man. That's just, I can deal with the ashes, but I'm not getting on the boat with a dead man. He's like, come on, well, it's not that bad. We're going to leave before everybody else leaves. So when we get back, you have the rest of the day off. I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to see him, man. He goes, no, the guy's going to be in a coffin. And they're going to take the seal out of the coffin. They're going to have bands on it, and there's going to be bricks around his feet. We just take him off the continental shelf. We got to record it, and the location. It's just going to be 2 guys, a pastor, and there's and the camera person. So I'm like, you sure I'm not going to be able to see this guy, right? No, you aren't going to be able to see the guy. So back then is when we left to go. We left at 6 o'clock in the morning then for our charters, and so we had them show up at like 5 o'clock before the rest of the crews got down there to the marina. And I see the van come pulling in the parking lot because the guy was like from up in Charlottesville, Virginia, up from the mountains, that passed away. So just like with a charter, I go up there because I like to help them get their coolers or whatever to bring them down to the boat, just and do the intro. Um, so we get up there and we pull this guy out of the back of the van, and they put him on that little dolly thing, and it's covered with a blanket. So we get down to the boat and they pull the blanket off. There's holes drilled in the top of the coffin, and you can see the dude inside. And I'm like, I could, but I was too deep in to take off running. So anyway, so we get the dude loaded on the boat, and we run out there, get off the continental shelf, and so we lift him to go throw him out. But there's like this little metal band that's on the top of the covering boards around the back of the boat to protect it from the dock lines. Well, the band on the coffin kept catching the band guard, and the dude wouldn't get off the boat. So then Captain Dave is like, so I got an idea. This is what we're going to do. Y'all going to grab it at one time on 3. I'm going to hit the throttles and y'all going to shove him, and he's going to go off the boat. So sure enough, but the plan was, when he hit the water, because of the gasket being out, the holes and the bricks around his feet, he's going to go down. So it works like a champ. He goes shooting off the boat, hits the water, and lands in the water, and there's the coffin floating on top of the water. And it was dead silence on the boat. Well, you can't just leave a dead dude out there floating around. And then finally, David looks over the rail at me down the cockpit. He goes, "All right, Johnny, I got an idea." I can't wait to hear this one. So he's like, I want you to stand up on the covering boards, and I'm going to back up to it. And when I get up to it, I want you to jump over on top of it, jump up and down till it goes down. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. There's no way I'm jumping on a dead man. So anyway, that trip gets over, we're done. It's like a week later. We're out there, just one of those nights I was telling you about, where it's pitch black, and we'll take turn at watch at the wheel, watching the radar to make sure that, we don't get run over by ship or anything. And it was my watch. So I'm sitting up there and just kind of just watching the radar, watching the lines, checking on everything. Dave's taking a nap, and I happened to look over at at this point, this was when we used Loran rather than GPS TDs. And I look over at our Loran TDs, which is our location. And I'm like, we are right where we dumped that dead guy over. So now I'm freaked out. And then I started getting blips on the radar, and they like ghosts on the radar would come up and then go away, and then come up and go away. And I'm like, this is really freaking me out now.
It's a
I just
ghost.
wanted to be back home. And then when it got light in the morning, we were surrounded by the Navy. They were out there. I guess they were using us for guinea pigs when they were out there doing their practice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was scared to death.
Wow. So you got a lot of stories.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love it. I love the charter fishing where we got to meet new people every day.
Yeah.
Um, it's weird because so there was that boat we had. There was a TV show related that was part of the marketing for that boat. His father was an ophthalmologist, called Saltwater Fishing with Dr. Jim. So it would be weird because when you take so many people fishing, it's impossible to remember them all. And then with a TV show, you'd be somewhere and somebody come up and they start talking to you about fishing and like, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, like I don't remember. But yeah, it was because you're really involved with something big on their life. They there's somebody that's eating potted meat all year long so they can afford to go fishing once a year. It's a big deal. And then, so then your picture's on the refrigerator. And I never lose sight of that it's a blessing to be able to take people out there and do it.
Mhm.
And and I feel that you owe it to the people on that boat to do the absolute best that you can do. To provide them, which it's fishing. I mean, not you're not going to catch fish every day, but you got to try your hardest.
Yeah,
Um, And I think, when we look at that with all of life, then I think that makes us better people, no matter what your fishing trip is, whether it's, I don't know, golf, your business, whatever.
I agree 100%. So, I do wanna get into your story a little bit.
Okay,
Um, you were not a captain yet when you became lost at sea, is that correct?
that is correct. That's
Okay.
was the
Do you
Navy.
wanna take me through it from the beginning?
Okay, yeah, sure will. So, I know I got kind of sidetracked there, but yeah. So 1998, I left here to go down for that season in Palm Beach, to Sailfish Marina. Sailfish Marina was kind of like where the best in the world would show up after each Christmas, and they would, for a handful of jobs. And I was fortunate that each year I went down, I got a job. So I got a job on a boat called the Major Motion. Some buddy of mine helped line me up with that rig, and charter fishing a lot of times like 2 half days. So fished that winter season. Great captain, Jimmy Gardner, really taught me a lot about related to tournament fishing and staying on your spot where the fish are, and not a lot of other people go on your fish, which tournament fishing is all about the numbers and and catching the big one. But so that season was starting to wind down, the charter fish season in Palm Beach. About the same time, we got word from the owner that the boat was listed for sale. So, how many of us in life have that situation? We think we're safe. We got our job, and next thing you know, oh, company's closing its doors. Oh, we got bought out. You're fired. See you later. Whatever it is, I think that's people can associate with that. Um,
Yep.
the news that you don't want to hear. So my captain told me, look, I understand that, if you go ahead and find another job. So again, I like to, in the spring of the year, I would like to go to the Bahamas and Mexico. Had a great year in Mexico the year before. Wanted to get back there. Mentioned it to a friend of mine who's a captain from here. He talked to this gentleman that was up in Stewart, Florida, and guy named Cap Merrick Bingham, great guy from Australia. Love Cap Merrick. Um, Lined us up on this boat. So the boat is called the Aninga. It was a 56-foot Jim Smith. I'd never worked on a Jim Smith before. I always wanted to. So it's a custom built sport fish, known for being excellent following sea boats and fast. Um, Went up, met Eric. Really, there's not a whole lot of standard, type interviews and resumes and stuff like that in the fishing. I mean, a lot of it's based on word of mouth and your reputation. Reputation is huge, and that's why always try to protect it in that industry. And so anyway, so we were gonna the trip would be to Belize, Guatemala, Mexico, and for it'd be close to 3 months with the owner's family. The owner, his wife, him, his daughter, and then his son was gonna be coming in and out. Um, Great family from Port Aransas, Texas. I mean, super, super nice. So, but again, we're going to be there's going to be 5 of us living on a 56-foot boat for 3. I mean, can you imagine think about it at home, like how challenging it is sometimes to live with your family in a house which is typically bigger than 56 feet long and 14 feet wide, 15 feet wide. So we had to get along. So we went to fish a tournament in the Bahamas. Just it's kind of like just a little prove out, see how everybody's going to get along. Is this going to work? We had a wonderful time over there. And there was something that unique that happened. We were in a place called Chub Key, and so Chub Key has a beautiful beach next to the marina. So really, my time was when we get in from fishing, I get the boat cleaned up, and then I would go over to that beach and just like swim or go bone fishing or whatever. If you like, typically dudes that like to surf and like to free dive or dive, don't just go swimming. And that's me. I mean, I love surfing, and everywhere I go, I try to carry my surfboard with me. And but when we were there, you know, it's like there's just something that was put on my soul to go swim to this thing called Mamaratu Rock, which is, you know, a good ways off the island. So that's what I do. Every day when I got in, I would hit that water and I would swim, try to swim to that rock. And each day I'd try to push myself further and further and further. The reason I like to say this is because, you know, God is not going to send us in anything He doesn't prepare us for. And I didn't realize it, but that's what He was doing. He was preparing me for the battle I was about to go through. And so, great trip. Everybody gets along. We had an absolute blast. Come back to Stewart. We load the boat up with everything we need, and then we take off to stage in Key West, Florida. So our run is from Key West to Cancun across the lower part of the Gulf of Mexico. We pretty much, to this day, even most guys, it's a straight shot. You're going against the Gulf Stream, so you factor in the extra mileage based on the current, because, you know, you're kind of losing ground a little bit. And so at the time, we were one of the only boats that, number one, held enough fuel, and number two, was fast enough to make that crossing in a day, that 350 miles. And so that was pretty cool. That never happened before. There was another boat that was just built that was fast too, and they were going to be able to go with us, but they ended up leaving with another group of boats a few days prior to our arrival. I talked to the captain in Palm Beach, and, you know, just one of those things, you know. Back then in '98, the weather isn't like it is now. So, for example, I can pull up a screen and I can put down a chart. I can put a radar on top of the chart. I can put Sirius or satellite weather on top of that, and I can tell you exactly what's going on 100 miles away from me with layer and all that. So there's wind errors. It's just, there's so much information there now. Then it was. Did you ever see in the movie Perfect Storm where they had the weather facts come through and like the antenna broke and it was kind of shoddy? And
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so we had a single sideband radio which receives a signal. You can get a fax through it. Also, you know, there's a company called Weather Routers who would do high seas weather forecasts. Um, we had our weather window, looked like a beautiful crossing. So the night before we left, so it been the night of April 12th, I remember calling my dad and telling him, you know, Dad, I'll call you tomorrow night from Mexico. We should have a pretty good crossing. So it looks like we're gonna have great weather.
Yeah.
And so the next morning we got up super early. We wanted to be able to up and to start running at the crack of light in the. And so I guess we probably pulled out of the slip about 5 o'clock or so in the morning, and got to where we could pick up, and we were running, and it was just before 9 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock, we had talked to a boat that was already over. Eric had talked to a boat that was already over in Mexico, and we're going to do a radio communication on our single sideband radio, which is a long range radio. VHF is kind of like you're limited by the height of your antenna and the curvature of the earth. So a lot of times those things don't happen. It's like, oh, well, not a big deal. You know, they're all right. So that morning before we left, we had a conversation. It was this: should we take the EPIRB, which is the emergency positioning device, and the life raft out and put it in the cockpit, because it was inside of the salon of the boat, kind of like the den of the boat.
Hmm.
Nah, if we do that, that means we'll just have to clean it when we get there. Nothing ever happens during the daytime. Now, I had a degree in safety. I should have known better than that. And that was my decision. And you know, but this boat, we've got coolers, we've got refrigerators, we got freezers for bait, we've got all this stuff that we need. A big fuel tank on deck, and, you know, just all this stuff that we're going to need to be out of the country.
Hmm. And so on this run, is it just you and the captain?
It's just the captain. Yep, just this
It's
crew.
just you two on the boat.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, we did not. That boat held enough fuel, so we didn't have. But we had like coolers, and the deck was full of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a picture that's in the book. You can kind of see Eric kind of like crawling around stuff as we're taking down a shade. But yeah, got underway. Beautiful, 2 to 3 foot following seas, nice groundswell, rollers, just calm. Couldn't ask for nice morning chill. And we're running along, and all of a sudden we heard bam, bam. Like we're like, what in the world was that? So, he slows her down, and so I go downstairs to check it out. And so that boat had double doors in the center where you go into the salon, and it was like like a lot of like bathrooms and stuff now will have like the barn doors that are on the roller slide,
Yeah.
but it's on a boat. So if you have two of those and this boat starts rocking, they're going to be bam, bam, going crazy. But so there's like a cable that went around there so that no matter where you opened it when the boat rocked, it was like they would counterweight
Yeah.
balance each other. So anyway, one of those cables came loose. I fixed it, clammed up on the bridges just for 9 o'clock. And when you come up on that bridge, like there was like a little walkway that went forward, and then there's like a seat that went around to the left of the front of the console where the steering wheel and the electronics are. And so then the steering wheel's on the center line. So I'm standing next to Erica in that little walkway. And I'm like, everything's good, Cap. I'll get some Loctite on it when we get there tonight, get it fixed. And it's like, great, buddy. So he was in the process of pushing the throttles back up, and look forward to seeing something like I've never seen before in my life. I don't know how to describe it other than it was like going into a hole or going off a cliff. And when that 56-foot boat went off of it, and went down. It was at such an angle where I free fell forward and fell to the front of the bridge. People know sport fish. A lot of times they have like an enclosure of like clear plastic around there, like like a windshield kind of deal. It's flexible plastic. That boat didn't have that. It just had the plastic right in front of the console. So I was able to grab hold of a tuna tower leg and a little rail to keep from falling forward further out towards on the bow deck. I'll never forget when I hit, and I started to duck down, and I just heard this awful this breaking noise, and looked up to see this a crack going across our bow deck, starting from the right side going over to the port side, where she had separated. So basically, the whole bow deck, just separated and came off because of the force of that wave with it going down.
Had you guys basically you were at the top of a very tall wave and just fell
I
straight off like a
I
cliff?
I don't but it wasn't a situation. So with these boats, like when we have a hurricane groundswell and we've got huge waves, like we'll be out there trolling next to each other, and you'll disappear. Slick calm, but it's just huge rollers. When we're running in those, you can tell because the boat labors going up the wave, and then sometimes you actually got to pull your throttles back some going down because of the propeller revolution, because it's a direct kind of drive thing, increases your RPMs of your engines. And it wasn't like a lack of RPMs going up. It wasn't like a lag, like she was straining. So it was more like it just like went and just dropped off. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it other than that.
Yeah, but basically what happened is you guys fell
The
from
crest,
the
yeah,
from the crest of a wave straight down.
yes.
And you said it was a 50-foot wave?
So the boat was 56 foot.
Okay, yeah.
I'm always careful about how I answer this. So the boat was 6 foot. Sport fish vessels have the bridges more aft, so you can see what's going on in the back because we're turning around chasing marlin. I know that as I was falling forward, everything within my peripheral was in the wave. Yeah, never. I mean, and I've talked to a boat builder of mine that knew of somebody out of Oregon Inlet that saw one of these things, and that's where the wave is. It's rocked my world, um, lack of a better way to put it. So when I was writing the book, I was looking at documentaries and stuff like that, and there's one thing that I noticed in all these documentaries. Any crew member that was on the bridge that saw it is rocked by it. Like there were some documentaries, like let's say for example, the captain was down below in his quarters and didn't see the wave. Um, it's a totally different. It's just the sheer force of that beast is. I don't know, it's incredible. It's something. There's still times to this day where like I'll see like if I'm watching like in the movie theater. Perfect example. When I went to go see Perfect Storm. I had to leave the movie theater
Wow.
because of the way some of them look. And the thing is as a mariner, you pretty much know that rogue waves will stretch a ship out and break it and sink. And usually there's nobody left to tell the story of it because everybody's dead, because it
Yeah.
happened so quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, just it was healing for me in a way to see that, look, I'm not the only one that's all like having a problem with what I saw. It's
And
definitely
you and the captain both saw it, right? You were both
yes.
together. A rogue wave comes, the boat kind of comes crashing down from the crest of the wave, and then the whole front of the boat breaks off.
Pretty much like the bow deck peels off is the my best thought of it. So think about a Tupperware container. You put a lid on a Tupperware container or like a Rubbermaid container, whatever, and you squeeze this sides, and it's kind of hard to squeeze in.
Yeah.
Take the lid off, you can squeeze it in kind of easy. Of course, boats have bulkheads, like, cross sectional walls to help support the hull. Um, that's what I was hearing breaking was the bulkheads, and then of course, with that bow deck popping off, just allowed it to keep on going. And even though I saw what I saw and felt what I felt, I still had that feeling of, all right, she's going to ride up, but she just stuck and kind of listed over to her side. And in that moment, Eric turned to his left immediately and stopped. So to his left were our radios, and the words that strike fear, and any mariner, pilots as well too. There's three words. That's the same word: Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Those words are it's like at a different level. Um,
Yeah.
the radios were already dead. Now I've been out there before and assisted with boats going down, and literally the boat, like the house part of the structure is underwater, but the bridge is still above water, and the radar is still going around in circles. So I think that says what happened. I mean, how much of an intrusion, immediate intrusion, and implosion that was on the Aninga, that she didn't, that the radios were already dead.
Yeah.
Um, so from
Yes.
that point, he said, "Get the life jackets." Well, that was another failure. We're going to be out of the country, and we set up like the little pop up tents behind the boat, and tents on top of the tents were on top of the life jackets. So with everything shifting, I mean, I tried as hard as I could to get the life jackets out, but I couldn't get them. It got to a point where it was just a couple feet from where that side of the bridge, which was on the left side or the port side, was leaning on to that side where that was about to go underwater, and I realized that I needed to get off this thing because I didn't need to be trapped inside here. So literally, I stepped off into the water, then I swam around to the back of the boat, where Eric was, because he had dropped down the stairs because he was going to get the EPIRB and the life raft inside the salon. So because the boat was buckled and twisted, those doors were jammed together. They wouldn't open. So as I came around there, I saw him like punching the glass on the windows to try to break it. Small panes of glass, pretty strong, so they wouldn't break. And then that was at that moment where I was kind of like over where the side of the cockpit is. So on these boats, we have these things called, this boat had a tuna tower that went up. Then we had these things called outriggers, and they go up and then they kind of like lay out. And then from that, it's like a line that's like works like a flagpole. That's how we take and get the line that goes from the fishing rod to spread it out, so we get a wider path of the baits that are going through the water. And it was in that moment that I was over there. Of course, they were up, and I felt something pull down on my shoulder. It was one of those lines from the outrigger, and as it was sliding across, so I look up and I see like in the book, the way I described somebody's never seen a tuna tower. It's like a high voltage line tower in a way. So you have that up, and then you have these long poles with these X braces that are on them, with cables that run through those for support. Lots of places for your body to get trapped and taken down with it. And that's when it was in that moment that when I saw that, and Eric's still trying to get to the our life safety equipment. I was like, we got to get away from this thing. So because it was leaning to that port side or that left side, you think it'd be easier just to kind of like just go off that side of the boat. For some reason, we didn't. We both cleared straight back. The second we cleared, she rolled over. She capsized and went down. And so that was kind of like, I'm going to say that may have been one of the first miracles right there. And then, so us as human beings, we think that we're capable of doing things sometimes that we aren't capable of doing now. 10 to 12 knots is not that much wind, not much wind at all. Pretty calm actually. And but we can't swim that fast. So that's one of the things to this day that just blows my mind. So all that stuff that was up high with the poly balls, which are like these big rubber float balls, the coolers and other things were just gone with the wind. But there was one small bait cooler, and we were both able to get hold of that little igloo cooler and each get our hand on it. So this was something that was unique. I mean, to describe myself back then, I was far from my roots, but with my faith. But I thought I tried to be better than the people around me, faith wise, but wasn't saying a whole lot. I mean, I was living a rock star lifestyle, partying like a madman, and so I didn't talk about it. Didn't talk to Captain Eric about it. But it was in that moment when we both grabbed that cooler. I mean, you couldn't have you. It couldn't have been in perfect unison because it was like we knew that this is we're done. But we both grabbed that handle of the pool, and we both grabbed each other in perfect unison. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we just kept repeating the Lord's Prayer over and over and over again. And then when we finished, the Aninga came back up. It was just a small section of her bottom, and with her wheels and her rudders and but it was something we could get her body. So the textbook, I don't know if we're gonna do that rapid fire thing, but textbook out there, you can live a long time as long as you aren't in the water. Our bodies are not made to be in the water.
Yeah.
And so bigger, and you want to create a big picture, big image. So best thing to do is if you can get on that hole, get on that hole. So we let go of the cooler. Eric got to the hole, and I looked over. So this is kind of funny. So the morning before we left Stewart, I hadn't talked to Eric about the surfing thing yet. Because in Cancun, there's actually some pretty good surf down there. And so I'm like, man, the worst I can do is just bring it with me. Aunt Donna dropped me off at the boat that morning because she lives in Palm Beach. The worst thing happens, it stays in the truck and she just takes it back home with her. So that morning when we left, I'm like, hey, Eric, can I bring my surfboard? He's like, all right, buddy, but it's staying in your bunk. So my bunk was up in the bow. And so anyway, so again, Eric's on the hull and I see the surfboard floating. And I told Eric, I feel like I need to get the surfboard. So the surfboard was in a new bag. I'm not going to reveal the details of the condition of the board, but it was in a travel bag. So he said, yeah, buddy, go get it. So I made my way to the surfboard. So that's what's one of the things that we all go through struggles in life. And we have hard times and it's tough pushing through it. But sometimes we just have to. So I had to push through some diesel fuel. When I hit that diesel fuel, I knew where every cut was on my body. I knew it was in my eyes, it was in my ears, in my nostrils, in my mouth. I mean, just that slimy film and in my lung, breathing in my lungs. And this was so this is where that, as far as that survival mindset, I feel like it really kind of like kicked into like, wow, that's nuts how I processed that just now. And it was this. I can't afford to throw up because I want to throw up so bad. I'm like, I can't afford to throw up because I can't afford to lose this food that's in my stomach right now. I'm going to have this for the energy I'm going to need for this fight ahead of me. That
Wow.
was the exact thought.
Wow.
Made it through, got to the surfboard. Again, something wasn't right with the surfboard. Got back to, then got back over to Eric, and then, but she was gone. She went back down. There was just a little bit of air that was in what's called the lazarette, which is the back part of the hull. Said somehow breached through, and she went on to the bottom. We were in about 6,000 feet of water where she went
Wow.
down.
So the
Yeah,
boat goes back down, and now what? You just have the surfboard?
yeah. Now we're just hanging with the surfboard, and then a piece of a engine cover floats up, which is just like maybe 3/8 plywood, maybe with just like a little like 1.5 or 2x2 ring that goes around it for the frame. That thing was miserable to hold on to. I mean, it was only like a couple feet wide, maybe about 4 feet long, because there was just no comfortable way to that thing. It would dig into your side,
Yeah.
um, and then there was also a cushion from one of the benches on the bridge, but it was like a foam that was easily saturated, like a thin foam, and it was probably time for new cushions up there, but it was something to hang on. We were thankful for it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when the struggle really started. So and there was initial thoughts of, man, I'm a failure. I was on a boat, just like in the military, police, whatever it is. I mean, you follow the orders of your superiors. And my captain gave me a command to get life jackets, and I was unable to complete that command. So that was, for me, that was mission failure. The first mission failure. And then from there, it was a struggle in the water. And the struggle wasn't just physical. So rarely did I share this story, but when I did, I never talked about the mental part of it because it's too hard. It was always too hard to talk about, and I would just like defer as I was telling the story because wouldn't allow I tried not to allow the emotion to get over to take me back to that place, what it was like. So in the water, there were extreme highs, extreme lows. When people go to the beach, they may notice that they see debris floating,
Mhm.
and sometimes you'll see like it's in a line. So as the Aninga was sinking and getting to those pressures, she was breaking up, and she formed a line that went down sea, or like down with with related to the direction of swell, down sea, and then there was a line that went off to an angle. And as we're fishing, we look for those because we'll look for that, like the sargasso seaweed lines, and we'll troll along those because again, that whole ecosystem that develops off of it. That's where we
Mhm.
catch fish sometimes. Um, we got to where Eric had his glasses on, so he gave me his glasses, and he had his cap on too. So he would watch the horizon, and I would kind of lay back and I'd watch up in the sky, looking for airplanes. All of our conversations were, for the most, were positive. I mean, we encouraged each other. We lifted each other up, and you know, we counted the blessings. I mean, I remember one time we were there and some mahi mahi came swimming around us, and it was just they were so beautiful. And it was in that gorgeous blue water to watch them swim around, and then there was like a moment, a little thought came in, like, all right, what's going to be after them? And so push that out real quick though. And through that, there was, like, I'll never forget this. So, the struggle was to have something that we could collect things and put them in. So, like, so we're going to be out of the country for a long time, right? So, these wealthy people, they like good food. So we would go to a butcher in Palm Beach and have, a custom order made. And so I remember seeing this like grocery bag floating by. So I grabbed the grocery bag and opened it up, and inside were the prettiest filet mignon you've ever seen in your life. I'm like, wow, they look good. But you know what? There's blood in that bag too. So they're wrapped in the styrofoam. So letting them go, kept the bag because that half a cent bag could have saved their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to say one of the big moments was a white speck on the horizon that we saw. They got larger and larger and larger and larger, and that was a cruise ship. And we did end up finding some flares, and we did end up finding two life jackets. So your ocean going life jackets are type 1 type life jacket. These were like the type of life jackets that we found are the ones that were like for a cruise, and they'd be like for a lake. Um, So not made for the rigorous things that the ocean could put forth. So something else is starting to go on too. Um, the You could see it was getting right. The wind was starting to kick up. An El Nino effect storm. And actually, what had happened at 9 o'clock, about the same time we went down, there was a call that went from Cancun to Key West, and that call was this: stop all the boats. Don't send anybody. It's getting bad over here. And so that's a big deal for that kind of statement. So even when we're tournament fishing, you have captain's discretion. Basically, captain, here's the conditions. Your vessel, your responsibility. What are you going to do? Go or not? But for Jim and them to say, look, don't send any boats. It's bad. That's monumental in what they're facing, what they're seeing, and and that would be coming on us out there while we're in the water.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cruise ship going by and just the flares that we put on that. So that was a hard time I had writing that, to put that feeling in words. And I still couldn't adequately put it in words, the feeling of hopelessness, seeing it go over the horizon. And there's a ton more detail about all this. I don't want to give it all away because I don't want to be a spoiler. Obviously, the big spoiler is I'm here and I'm talking to you, so I lived through it.
Yeah. So
But
so the boat you saw, it didn't see you and it just
the
kept
ship,
going.
yeah. It was a cruise ship. So imagine all those eyes on a cruise ship.
Oh,
It was actually,
no.
yeah, this Carnival cruise ship. And it was only like 6 miles away from us.
And were you able to set flares off as well?
We sent flares, smoke, all kinds of stuff. And
Wow.
just waiting for any moment for that turn to, just to watch the angle start to change for it to come back to our
That
location.
must have been just completely crushing to see it
Yeah.
just keep going and then disappear.
Yeah. So we were down to, so there was something happened earlier too, as those waves were starting to build where, like the type of flare kit that we had was like a drum kind of canister that would twist and lock. Um, we used a couple flares on the plane, but then after the plane went by, kind of like a little wave hit that and busted it open. So we lost that big flare gun that has high hang time. So we're just down to the 12 gauge in the other kit. And so by the time the cruise ship was gone, we were down to I think like a couple stick flares and a couple bullets that were on the card for the 12 gauge aerial flares. And looking at what happened with that canister, we decided to put the pistol inside of the surfboard bag over top of where the fins were. And I'll never forget when I was going to put that in there, a wave hit me, and when the wave hit me, it kind of shifted my angle up, and that card that's on the back that was holding those designed to hold like five was holding only had two left. Um, the edge of the board bag caught that bullet and popped it off the card. And I remember watching it sink. I just think,
Oh,
man, I'm in failure again. I mean, that could have been what saved us. So we were down to one bullet for the aerial flare, which
yeah.
is the typical flare that people see. The red stick flares are kind of like very similar to made differently, but similar to the flares that you see like on the road, and then the smoke flares. I mean, when you get a whole lot of wind blowing, the smoke gets dissipated so quickly.
Yeah.
Here's another thing is, I'd never struck a flare in the water before. I mean, that took a little bit of practice getting used to how to do that, but we got proficient with it.
Yeah. And so you're just holding on to debris and the surfboard and a couple other items and just basically your body's in the water.
Yes, bodies in the water. So I went out one time, paddling the line looking for the flare kit, or looking for the EPIRB and the life raft, and was not successful. I was a loser. When the line that went diagonal, I had some apprehension on that line because I was afraid that if I got messed up, I would never be able to get back to Eric. So again, we're in the middle. We're 90 miles out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, the lower Gulf, pretty much 90 miles out in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the Gulf Stream, and there's no points of reference anywhere.
Hmm.
Clouds are starting to come in, so we're losing the sun. We've got the little bit. We've got the swell, but then we got this. Now we got a wind coming across the swell at a different angle, which is kind of changing things. So that's why I was kind of scared about, that line. And that was a distraction to me. We're really focusing on it, which later on, it did get to a point where it was like, if we don't find that deep urban life raft, we're going to die out here.
Yeah.
And then I went out, that last time to go look, and that was hard, because I knew what would happen if I found the EPIRB. I knew that when I activated the EPIRB, they would hone in on my position.
Hmm.
So that type of EPIRB back then was strictly radio signal. And I mean, we always had this false sense of security, I think, in a way, all these years fishing while we were using that before it switched over to GPS based. That, if that EPIRB goes off, that's going to save you.
That's
So
like something that you set it off and then
yeah,
that means they come rescue you.
they triangulate the position based on towers and planes or what. So as I was doing it, I talked to a buddy of mine, Dwayne, that has an electronics company, and he was like, "John, they would only pick you up if the plane that was listening had to add it to the frequency and was listening for the signal." I'm like, "Wow, that makes me feel good." So you're just
Wow.
thinking like, "Wow, okay."
But you
Uh,
did find it. So as you're out there, what you're doing is you're swimming out a little bit to find items that you need, such as the life raft and the
yes.
EPIRB.
So here's the crazy thing: as I paddled the debris line, I noticed things of similar buoyancy that were in similar locations in the boat were together. So the life jacket. So that first time I went out, that's when the life jackets floated up to Eric, right by Eric. So it's like that didn't make any sense. They shouldn't have floated up there because based on their position where they were on the boat, and their buoyancy, they shouldn't have been there at all, popping up with him. Like they were sort of like lost from its place on the vessel.
Yeah.
So that was weird. So this is where I really, this is the part that I think helps people related to thinking their life isn't worth living. So I went back out. I went down that diagonal line. The wind was probably going a good 20 knots now. Now the line is getting busted up. So I don't have that path to follow anymore the same. So I figured, let me paddle through the trough of the wave, and then I'll pick up the other line, and maybe I can paddle back up that. Well, as I was paddling that way, I realized that, there's just the debris everywhere. There's no uniform way to get back to Eric. So, and now when I left, Eric was already starting to go into the effects of hypothermia. The water was 79 degrees, but we're 98. So eventually, you're going to succumb.
And how long had you been out there, do you think, by this
So
time?
at this point in time, this was probably like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere around in there.
Mhm.
So we went down just before 9 in the morning. So 6 hours exposure. Like that's the thing, like surfing, you're never in the water all day long to experience that effect on your body.
Right.
Plus, you're up on the board and part of your body is out of the water, and we didn't have that option with the condition of the board, but that's when it started getting in my head. You're a loser. You're a failure. Eric's going to die because you failed to do your job. And it just, I couldn't get it out of my head over and over and over again. John, you're starting to get cold. You're getting cold. You know what's going to happen. You're going to drown. When you can't perform. When you look at your life jacket. Your life jacket's already starting to tear. Over and over and over about how worthless I was. About there was no hope. There was no future for me other than drowning or getting eaten by a shark. And that really got deep and got deep. And I tried and I paddled further, and then I really realized, like, I'm lost. It's it. We're done. No EPIRB, no life raft, and don't know where my captain is. And I'm getting cold. And that's what is. So recently, I um, helped an individual. Not me. I was just there as the messenger, but you know, she had already started telling her mom who she wanted to have what. And that hit me pretty hard because when I was in the water, I started thinking about all my stuff and who I wanted to have what shotgun or what fishing rod or whatever. I was hoping that I just had my first nephew born. I was hoping that my parents would, I had this beautiful blue and white Bronco, and I was hoping that my parents would take that, maybe put it in a barn or something for him and give it to him. Um, Wouldn't be able to say goodbye to people. I wouldn't be able to, like tell my family, look, I'm at peace. This is where I love to be, but not gonna make it. So I made the plan, and I got and in the book I go into detail as far as my plan for knowing that I would effectively end my life out there with how far down I needed to go in all those details. Made the decision, so physiologically, with hypothermia, there's a situation, your fingers and toes get cold first, right? Because what the vessels are constricted is trying to keep that warm blood to your core. Um, then then your body gets into a point where it says, all right, you're done. There's nothing we can do. Vessels dilate and the blood rushes out, and there's a feeling of warmth. I was nowhere near that point because I had dexterity and I was able to do things, manipulate things that if I was there at that advanced, that wouldn't have happened. So took the life jacket off. I went just, and again, seas are bad. Probably like 8 foot. I mean, 8 foot when your head's in the water. It's pretty big. Surfing is different. I mean, 8 foot, you're loving it because it's overhead and hopefully barrels or whatever. But when it's your head and you're looking up at that thing, they're like monsters, especially when you look up the face. And then that white, that cap. But took the life jacket off and I started to roll. I said a prayer. I'm like, Lord, I didn't want to die, but I knew I was going to die. So I want to do it. It was on my terms. So I prayed. I'm like, please don't see this as suicide. But I've got no other choice. Please forgive me. Like roll under. And as I was rolling off, all of a sudden, the greatest feeling of warmth and strength in my whole body. And it scared me, actually, to tell you the truth. So I was like, I stopped and I'm like, grab the life jacket, and I grabbed the board. And so if you people, the believers, they have the Holy Spirit in them, right? And the Holy Spirit will communicate with you. It's like an internal thing. This wasn't like that. When I stopped and then I got myself together over off this shoulder over there, I heard a voice and it was John. It was these are huge seas, and this voice was able to penetrate that in calmness.
Mhm.
John, you spent a lot of time out here. Pick your line and paddle it, is what I heard. It's funny. I spoke at a local high school, and one of the students was like, "Well, how do you know it wasn't Cap Eric?" And I wish I'd been quick enough witted to say it didn't have an Australian accent. But when I heard that, it's like, even though everything in front of me said you're going to die, everything in my eyes, you're going to die. I knew that we were going to live.
Wow.
So here's the other challenge. Where's Eric? So that old headboat captain I was telling you about earlier, one of the things he taught me was, so this is before we begin, way before we have these electronics we have now. He taught me to look at the swell and use that to help me with my course. So basically, I check the compass, set her on course, look at the swell, focus on the swell, which is I'm looking in front of me so we don't hit anything. Um, and then I'm glancing gauges, but I'm looking at the swell to help me know where to go. And that will keep you within a few degrees of your course by doing that. Then, because then every now and then you double check yourself on your compass. Um, I wasn't capable of finding the pattern that I was able to find myself at that point in my career. I mean, I'd been fishing for several years then, and I was able to pick a pattern with that confused sea. It's like a wash machine, and I paddled. I mean, I'm talking like I paddled for like 40 for a long time, right straight back to Eric.
Wow.
That's impossible for me to do that. Um, so here's one of the unique things that happened a couple of years ago. You know, I was at church and listening to the sermon, and they were talking about like messengers about the Bible, and there's it hit. And I'm gonna tell you what, man. I know what happened out there, but like the devil likes to make us question stuff. But I know what happened, and it was like when this hit me, it was like whoa, this is so real. Um, it was this, and so when you look at like when there's a messenger in the Bible, typically there's a direction and a command. Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's leaving with his wife. Yeah, but go that way and what? Don't look back. So what happens? She doesn't follow the directions. She looks back, turns to a pillar of salt. Time and time again, there's a direction and a command. And when I realized that I received the direction and command, that was pretty big.
Yeah.
Um, so I was able to get back to Eric. I didn't tell him about the details of what all happened when I was out there. I mean, because I was still trying to figure out myself. Um, but I knew it was bigger than us for sure. And there was such a optimism of hope that I had, but I wished I could have gotten it across to him because um, we were gonna get through this. So I'm not gonna get into I won't get into all the details because I don't want to spoil it for the readers about what happened at the moment of our rescue. But
Okay.
prior to that, it was bad, and we decided that we weren't going to separate anymore. There would be times when I get hit by a whitecap and just get rolled, and just I remember just coming up just gasping for air. It's not like when you're at the beach and you get rolled, you can just push off the bottom and push up.
Yeah.
It's 6,000
It
feet below.
sounds like really there was some angels with you out there, and that's
There's
amazing. And so, did you ever find the EPIRB?
No, we never found the EPIRB, never found the life raft. And that was the thing. If I would have, so when I went on that journey, if I would have found the life raft, I don't think I'd ever would have deployed it because in those sea conditions, I couldn't have got it back to Eric.
Hmm. So you get back to him. You guys decide you're going to stick together.
Mhm.
And how long did you end up being out there before someone found you?
It was right before dark.
Okay.
So he like it's like, well, I'm going to stretch you out right to the end,
Yeah.
because I mean, even the vessel that found us, I mean, they told other people that like they weren't going to make it through the night.
Yeah.
Because again, I know Eric had no feeling from here down. So there was something that happened in that moment, at the time of the rescue, where I did have to go away from him, but it wasn't very far, and he was screaming. And so there's a point I like to, and I make that point here in the mission force when I'm speaking to these guys. At that moment when he was screaming, I thought he was getting eaten by sharks.
Oh my God.
So there was a decision to make. And there was, but it really wasn't. There was no decision to it. When he was screaming, I started just paddling, stroking as hard as I swimming. I mean, because I left the surfboard over there with him. I started swimming to him as hard as I could.
Yeah.
What do you know, the people that are watching this and listening to this, what are you going to do in life when your brothers, your sisters, your family, when they're screaming, when the sharks of this world are after them? What are you going to do? Are you going to charge to them to help them, or are you going to stay where it's safe?
And they say some people say everything happens for a reason. And I like how you had mentioned before you went out, you just had this feeling that you wanted to keep swimming out to that rock, and you got all that practice swimming, um,
Yeah.
strengthening your swimming before that. And I know you don't want to spoil too much of the book, but basically, did someone just came and someone found you just by sheer miracle?
Yeah, so and that's what I don't want to hold back from sharing with this, because so we're in the Gulf Stream. Gulf Stream is nothing but a river in the ocean, right? So we weren't trying to swim across it or through it, or we're just going with it. So we should, at that point, we should have been. And you can look on the charts, even in the book. I got the picture of the chart. That Gulf Stream is going to the east northeast when it comes through there, because it's going around. It's going to come around Florida, hook up the East Coast. Get up New England, shoot across to the other side, and come on back around. Um, so we should have been drifting to the east northeast. The wind was out of the southeast. So you can when the wind on the ocean gets blowing hard enough that it can literally move the surface water, like it can just push the surface water. If that was the case, we would have drifted up into the Gulf of Mexico. It's not what happened. We drifted across the current into the wind to be placed in the path of the only two other boats that left that day.
Oh wow.
The boats that so it was like that 19 miles that we drifted across to be put. I'm not talking like off it like a minor. I'm talking like dead off the tip of their bow of the ditch digger.
Wow.
Um, and that's when the moment was. That's why Eric was screaming, because of the vessels. So here's something even more amazing. That call that went from Cancun to Key West, they pulled out just before that call came. So if somebody would have so much as like, it's not proper to like take a poop on the boat before you leave because it kind of stinks the whole boat up. So you go up to like the ship store and take care of that. Um, that or somebody needed to go up there for that, or somebody wanted to just get a Pepsi or soda or whatever from the ship store. We
They
might
would
not be
have
talking.
they would have been delayed and they would have never left.
So that's the point that I like to make is, so what happened in that moment where I tried to end my life? Um, that's whether you think I'm an honest person or not. That's totally up to you to see what you think about that one, to discern that. And but the point we went down, the point we were found, are points on this earth that do not change. You could have gone anywhere in the world after, right after this happened. You could have gone to Cairns, Australia. You could have gone to Madeira, like over there, Portugal, or anywhere in the world, and you could have brought this accident, this incident up, and you'd have heard the same thing within the sport fishing industry. God save those boys out there. Um,
Amazing.
those,
Amazing.
and then just time and time again, it's those guys, and reconnecting with those guys and hearing their stories is pretty deep. Again, it took me going through a divorce to crush me enough to start sharing this. And when I cried out, there was two big prayers that I had then. One was, God, make me your Christian soldier, and he took me down a path related to understanding spiritual warfare that I never would have imagined. Then he needed to do that because look at yesterday. Like that type of thing that with us yesterday, with this meeting getting, something bad happened. And I told you, like this, some of the events that have happened in order to stop me from doing this are like crazy.
Mhm.
But it's crazily consistent enough that there's something to it.
Yeah.
Um, we hadn't had anything like that happen in 120 days, even close to that. We hadn't had a fender bender in 120 days. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's
It's the world works in mysterious ways.
yeah, it does. And so with this, nobody can tell me that God's not real because I know what happened out there. I know it's impossible.
Yeah.
Um, and it's helped. It's helped a lot of people to that have been struggling with that question. And anyway, I guess kind of getting up on a different soapbox. I mean, we see all this stuff that's going on in this world right now. And we're in a world that's at a loss for hope. Um, I know what led to my loss of hope, and I let the enemy get into my head and tell me I was no good. I let him tell me I was worthless and wasn't worth living. Um, we see we see people that hating each other. We see people fighting each other. We people see people just trying to absolutely destroy each other in our own country.
Yep.
It wasn't created for that, and it hurts the creator when that's happening because he loves us so much. So that was one of the things that I got out of this too was um, the love a parent has for a child. When my dad was able to find out about it, I mean I've seen him tear up and cry, and but when it sunk in, he bawled like a baby,
Wow.
and that's where I realized that wow, the love of a parent is extremely powerful. And even so, with Rite It, we have one of our local delegates from within Virginia, a guy named Barry Knight, great man. But he and my dad were planning on going flounder fishing the next day, and they were so shook up that dad couldn't go and his friend couldn't go with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so the unique thing is really talking with my parents about it. Is you know they would have rathered that my body washed up on a beach somewhere than to go through life not knowing.
Mhm.
So there's the things that parents go through related to their children can be pretty intense. I mean, not even where this is, but in all kinds of situations. A parent that's struggling with a child that's on drugs. It's a parent that's their child is knowingly with the wrong crowd and going to go down a road. But at what point do you give it over?
Yeah. Well, it really sounds like God was with you that day. The angels were with you that day. I'm really thankful that you shared your story. And you're still out on boats to this day, huh?
Yes, sir. Yep. Very fortunate to run a 62-foot Viking. I mean, thing handles like a sports car.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I love it, and I mean, it's a brotherhood that with us guys. I mean, I could have something go wrong right now, and I could call a guy in Florida. He'd be up here on the next flight. And that's what I think is so unique with especially with the group that of people that come into this facility right here is that they're a brotherhood that would do the same thing. I mean, they just would do anything for each other, and that's what's so cool about what Jimmy's doing. Just trying to help his brothers.
Yeah, and we're gonna put the links in the notes, but it's Valhalla Mission Force.
Valhalla's mission force.
Valhalla's Mission Force. Yep. And then the book is Lost in the Stream, the miraculous story of two fishermen lost at sea by Captain Johnny Savage. It might be backwards on my screen, but I'll flip it around.
No, no, that came out right.
Oh, it did?
And people my website is lostinthestreambook.com if people want to connect. Also Facebook, Instagram. The Facebook is that's kind of maxed out, but either one of those two platforms.
And
So,
what is your like? What's your name on Instagram?
it's author Johnny Savage.
Author Johnny Savage.
Yeah, let me double check that one. My wife set it up for me. She's amazing. So this is something that's so two things that are pretty cool. My employer made this book part of my professional development program.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's that they saw that not only was it something that I needed to do, but it was something that would help others. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to read the book. And yeah, I'm really grateful that you came on to share your story. And I want to say thank you as well for doing all the work that you're doing.
oops, but sorry
Uh,
about that. I'm just trying to double check that for you on the
and now Siri's communicating with us. No, but I just want to also say thank you for doing all the work that you're doing at Valhalla's Mission Force. Um,
I'm a small part of this big thing. Just blessed to be here. But it's Johnny Savage, Johnny.Savage_Arthur. It's
cool.
Instagram.
Johnny.Savage_author.
And I'm
Lost in
far from
the
author.
and Lost in the Stream is the book. And yeah, thanks again for coming on. Is there anything else you want to share with the world before we sign off?
Just look for people that are hurting out there. Um, they're everywhere, and sometimes just a matter. They just need somebody to listen.
Yeah,
If we listen in a manner that we're worried about what we're going to say rather than what's going on with them, then we can miss something that could help us. We go through struggles for that very reason, to be able to help others with theirs. And man, I tell you what, God is good.
beautifully said. Thanks so much, my friend.
All right, thank you.